Hello, welcome to What is this piece of wood? Yeah, I haven't lost it. Well, I might have done. This is in fact one of the not that many wooden mock-ups that we have in the collection. Now these usually result in a chorus of disappointment when you reveal, especially this one, when you reveal it's not actually a Heckler & Koch G11 caseless 4.6mm assault rifle. It is in fact a lump of wood with some bits of plastic on it. However, as a museum person, yes, I would very much like a real G11. Anyone willing to donate, please get in touch. But this, as an artifact of the development process, this really is the next best thing for us. So we have mock-ups similar to this for the SA-80 program. You may or may not see some at some point. They're in my book on British bullpups. This is not a British bullpup, this is a very German bullpup. So just the silhouette of this thing still strikes me as incredibly advanced and science fiction, probably because it never actually came to fruition, but then again the lines are pretty clean, especially the later model. So this is a mock-up of, unsurprisingly, since it's a mock-up, of the first generation G11, which is a different shape. It went through at least 3 major design changes in terms of its outer casing. Now this was originally, as the grooves would imply, fake on this of course because it's wood painted, this was a partly stamped sheet metal design originally. It only became a polymer receiver, a fully polymer receiver, later on. So this was probably made, I don't know, 1976, because the fully developed first prototype batch appears in 1977. In fact, we have some fascinating documents I can show you in just a moment, but let's have a look at the Knott rifle. This is completely non-functional, except for we do have, and I have to be very careful with this, the magazine, such as it is, does come off part way, but not all the way, which is interesting, and it's just latched in. Sorry, it's not latched in is my point. It just sits there and you can see some exposed bits of wood in there. Now I believe this metal magazine body is a real magazine body. It hasn't been finished as one, but the actual metal pressing, folded and welded and ground, I think is a real component. So it's one of the few real components, albeit it's not a complete magazine, on the gun. And it sits on top, as all of the G11 prototypes did. In the G11, the magazine retreats into the mechanism. Vastly complicated stuff goes on back here that we won't really get into. I'll show you a couple of drawings in a moment, but insanely complicated, rotating drum, gas operated, but like a clockwork gun. Absolutely astonishing, and why we really do need a real one at some point. But a real polymer fore-end handguard here as well. This is real. This is presumably, I mean, it hasn't been ground out of nylon or something like the SA-80 mock-ups that we have. This looks to be a pre-production actual moulding. So is this actually developmental in a strict sense, or is it just we've designed the gun, the prototypes are under production, here's what it's going to handle like? I think that's roughly what this is. But because this is a real component, it does contain a working, semi-working cocking handle, because at this early stage, this was your cocking handle. And this sprung plunger acted backward to drive the mechanism manually and cycle around effectively in or out of the chamber. You had to be able to clear a stoppage with a live round, of course, not just fire the weapon. So the whole point of well, not the whole point, embodies lots of interesting features, but the key point is this was caseless ammunition, a little rectangular block of propellant with the bullet at this stage still sticking out the front, but by the time of nearing production, because this thing got really far down the line, it was telescoped into the block of propellant. So that your propellant is also your case. Issues there potentially, but HK claimed to have solved it by about 1990 when this thing was going to go into service. Not in this shape. 2 iterations beyond albeit one of those was the ACR version for the American Advanced Combat Rifle program. Anyway, other real components. This trigger housing appears to be genuine to the program as well. Ambidextrous, 1976-7, that's pretty advanced. Might be the first HK to have an ambidextrous selector on it. I haven't checked that. We have safe, we have single shot, Oinselfeuer. We have 3 for 3-round burst, because the burst fire was going to be a major feature of this very high rate of fire caseless rifle. And then F for the German, I'm not going to attempt again, for automatic fire. We have a real butt plate as well, with a real disassembly lever. Now, in a recent GameSpot video, I very stupidly assumed this was like the later crank on the side of the later G11. It's not. It's purely a disassembly lever, because on the real gun, this whole assembly comes off and the guts of the rifle come out the back. So that's not to be messed with unless you're disassembling it. And we have metal sling loops. One at the front, which is just an MP5 front sling loop, and that's no doubt an MP5 rear sling bar as well. The scope. Now, this is interesting and worth comparing with the drawings that we do have, because this very rough mock-up scope, it literally has a nail sitting inside it, which doesn't really do a good job of representing a crosshair or anything. It has emergency iron sights represented on the top that you can't really use, even if this was squashy rubber, because your eye cup is in the way. Don't quite understand that. We had the same issue, I think, on the GR3. This isn't made of soft rubber. This is literally a mock-up again. And this, I think, this whole assembly is some sort of resin. It's like the stuff they used to make aircraft desk models out of. And we have separate plastic mounts here. Now, these don't resemble how the real scope mounted at all. So this does lend some credence to it being a development gun. Anyway, doesn't look like the actual drawing. This is actually come away. This was glued clearly, and the glue has come away at the front, so we have to be very careful with this. But you can't use it anyway. So that's it. There isn't much to say about this as an artifact, but it's a wonderful way in. And if we were going to display, it's not the way to do it. Obviously, you want a real G11, but you could build a museum display around just this object if you had to. Now, just quickly, I've grabbed a couple of things from our archive on the G11. There is more to be found in the main archive, but this does what we needed it to do. This is a later iteration of the G11, different shape, so we won't dwell on that, but it does show you there's that side crank lever thing that I mentioned, redesigned body, still recognisably this, and then it changed again after this. So that just happens to be with the thing that is the most interest to us, is of the most interest. So this is a tri-language document, helpfully in English as well. So Assembly Groups and Components, Rifle G11, edition April 1977. That's the generation of G11 this is representing. And if we turn to, there's that end cap with the flip-up rotating lever, just a disassembly feature, as I say. There's that handguard that's deliberate, that's just below it, but facing the other way currently. Polymer with an aluminium or cast metal lever and the spring plunger, and that's how you cock the thing. So that actually mostly matches this drawing because it's a real component. And then we have all the hilarious, complicated stuff that the G11 is famous for. Just the image of the actual rifle there on the top, and then it's stripped into its main components below. Even that's enough to blow my tiny mind. I don't know about you. There's that polymer cheek piece cover thing that I mentioned is missing on this mock-up. And you can see it really does have those sling loops on there. So the magazine catch on this model, I believe, is that little button there, behind where the magazine latches in, barely discernible. And on the model, we eagerly turn to the model to see where the heck that is, and it's fallen off. You can see traces of glue. That was meant to represent the magazine catch, never functional, and it's just been stuck on the side. And sadly lost, along with the back end of this, by the time we received it. So that's a shame. It's not complete. It's in relatively good condition apart from that. There's a nice complicated drawing there. We won't labour the point. This thing would have been extremely complex. But ironically enough, the mock-up is just like any other mock-up. It's a piece of wood with some bits of plastic stuck to it. And all it does is give people you're trying to sell the idea to, investors, government people, military people, the heft, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not convinced this is real weight by any means. It's very light. But at least the proportions, what it's like to shoulder it, the interaction with the selector switch, the trigger, the cocking lever, the very basics of what it's going to be when it actually gets made. And the sad end to this story is the very happy story of German reunification. When East and West Germany came back together, this thing was just about to get adopted as the new service rifle of the West German armed forces. Simply too expensive to justify when you've got a whole new country rejoining the rest of the country. It didn't make cost sense to do that. So the whole project was buried. The American Advanced Combat Rifle program did not go ahead certainly with this, and in fact not with anything else, and they stuck with the M16. So the amazing caseless Wunderwaffe did not happen. We still refer back to it as a sort of an interesting what if, and caseless ammo technology could still come back. It remains to be seen. Thanks for watching, guys. Do remember to like and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff, but also check out our website. It has recently been revamped, so see what you can find on there, including details of our new temporary exhibition, which is opening next month. So do keep an eye out for that. That's going to be a selection of especially decorated firearms. So everything from very beautiful flintlock arms through to a gold-plated Kalashnikov from, you can possibly guess where that's from. So in other words, cross period, but it's all about the guns. So if you're enjoying this series, you're definitely going to enjoy that exhibition. So do come and check that out. As I say, check the website for details on that as we get nearer to the time. But again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.